Cats can sense the kind of person you are long before you ever notice it yourself. They read the room differently, drifting past noise and distraction to find a heart that feels safe. And when they do, their trust arrives in ways so gentle that most people miss the significance. But for those who pay attention, their behavior reveals a truth that's surprisingly human. In this video, I want to show you the subtle signs that quietly tell you you're someone they believe in. And if that journey speaks to you, I'd be glad to have you join me for more. Chapter 1. The most misunderstood sign of feline love. Have you ever noticed how a cat will lean into your hand for a brief moment, then quietly walk away, as if something about you suddenly changed? It's easy to feel that tiny sting, like you did something wrong or broke an unspoken rule. Yet what's really happening is far softer than it appears. Your cat is simply navigating the rise and fall of their own senses, balancing the warmth of connection with the need to stay grounded in their body. When their world becomes a little too bright, too textured, or too warm, they step back. Not because they're rejecting you, but because they trust that you don't need constant proof of their affection. This small retreat actually shows how safe they feel with you, because managing their own comfort is something they can only do when they're not afraid of your reaction. And once you start seeing that pattern for what it is, you begin to notice the gentler language your cat has been speaking all along. Chapter 2. The silent ways cats show affection. It's easy to forget how much a cat can say without ever touching you or making a sound. And once you notice that pattern, you start seeing another one settle quietly into place, almost like your cat has been leaving gentle clues around your home. They speak in slow blinks that soften the space between you, in small shifts of their body that reveal where their trust is quietly blooming, and in moments where they linger in the doorway longer than necessary just to be near you. These gestures often look like nothing, which is why so many people dismiss them as neutrality or even indifference. But your cat is communicating with a language built on subtlety rather than drama. When they blink slowly at you, they're telling you they feel safe enough to lower their guard. And that tiny signal means far more than any dramatic cuddle ever could. And once you recognize these understated signs for what they truly are, the space between you and your cat begins to feel brighter and more alive with meaning. Chapter 3. Understanding slow blinks and other early affection signals. Slow blinks aren't just cute. They're one of the most vulnerable things a cat will ever give you. There's a softness in that moment when your cat lets their eyes drift half-closed in your direction, as if they're letting you see the calm they usually hide. When you return that slow blink, you're quietly telling them you understand their language, and it creates a small bridge that doesn't need touch to feel real. The same thing happens when they press their head against you, leaving a trace of their scent, like a quiet signature that says, "You feel like home." Even their purring, which so many people take for granted, becomes a kind of shared exhala sound that carries both comfort and a strange, instinctive hope for healing. And once you feel how natural it is for them to offer these early signs of affection, you begin to realize how much they've been trying to connect with you long before you ever reached out a hand. Chapter 4. Affection behaviors humans commonly overlook. Most people don't realize how many of a cat's sweetest gestures look nothing like affection at all. A cat dropping a random object at your feet might seem like mischief or clutter. Yet there's a quiet sincerity in the way they choose something from their world and place it in yours. Even exposing their belly, something so many people misread, is less an invitation to pet and more a moment of deep trust, like they're letting you see the most delicate part of who they are. They move through your life with signals so small you could miss them in the rush of an ordinary day. And when those signals go unseen, both sides feel a little more distant, without knowing why. Your cat isn't withholding affection. They're offering it in the only language that makes sense to them, hoping you'll notice the softness tucked inside each strange, hesitant gesture. And look, you can ignore that if you want. But once you really see these moments, you start realizing how often they've been trying to love you in their own quiet way. Chapter 5. Cat's supersonic sensory system. A cat's body is far more sensitive than most people want to believe. You might think your gentle touch is nothing, Yet to your cat, it can feel like a wave of sensation rushing across their skin, bright and overwhelming in ways we can't fully imagine. This is why a stroke that starts out comforting can suddenly feel too intense, causing them to flick their tail or shift their body as they try to steady themselves. Certain areas, like the base of the tail or along the spine, hold clusters of nerves that can turn affection into overload in an instant, even when your intentions are warm and steady. What makes this even more delicate is that each cat experiences the world differently. So the same touch can feel grounding one moment and too sharp the next. And once you understand how powerful their sensory system truly is, their sudden retreats and quiet corrections start to feel less like rejection and more like a gentle effort to stay balanced in your presence. Chapter 6. Evolutionary Survival Instincts. People love to believe that a cat should enjoy being held just because it looks affectionate. But that idea ignores what their body has been trained to survive. Even the calmest cat carries echoes of a world where restraint meant danger, and their muscles remember that long before their mind does. When you wrap your arms around them, their instinct isn't to question your intentions. It's to make sure they can escape if something shifts, because safety for them has always meant freedom of movement. So when they twist, wiggle, or push away, they're not rejecting your love. They're following a pattern woven through generations of cats who survived by choosing contact instead of enduring it. And the moment you approach too quickly, even with affection, their body reads it as pressure, not comfort, which is why they feel calmer when they're the ones who decide how close to get. Once you see how deeply this instinct shapes their reactions, their need for space stops feeling personal and starts looking like one more way they're trying to stay in harmony with you. Chapter 7. The role of scent in cat communication. You might think your cat stays close to you because of touch, but so much of their connection is built on scent long before your hands ever enter the picture. They read the world through invisible traces, letting their nose decide what feels safe, familiar, or worth approaching. When your cat rubs their face or body against you, they're blending their scent with yours, creating a shared identity that tells them they belong with you in a way no cuddle ever could. And sometimes, when they pull back after contact, it isn't distance they're seeking. It's simply space to gather more information, to keep strengthening the quiet map of safety they're building around you. The pheromones they release during these moments soften their own anxiety and deepen the bond they feel, even if all you see is a quick nuzzle or a gentle brush against your leg. And once you realize how much of your relationship is written in this invisible language, the smallest touch suddenly feels richer, like you're part of something your cat has been carefully weaving for a very long time. Chapter 8. The Progressive Trust-Building Method. There's something quietly life-changing about learning a way to bond with your cat that actually respects who they are. Instead of trying to win them over through constant touch or exaggerated affection, this approach begins by honoring the rhythms they naturally move through. It slows you down just enough to notice their hesitations, their small openings, and the moments when they lean toward you without needing to be coaxed. As you follow these gentle steps, you start to see how your patience lowers their tension, how your stillness makes room for their curiosity, and how your consistency teaches them that you're not here to overwhelm, but to accompany. The deeper beauty of this method is that it doesn't force closeness. It lets closeness unfold, reducing stress in both of you and allowing the bond to grow in a way that feels steady and earned. And once you feel how natural it becomes to meet your cat on their terms, you can't help but wonder how many quiet connections you were missing before. Chapter 9. Days 1 to 4. Observation and consensual interaction. At first, it feels almost too simple, just watching your cat instead of trying to win them over. But in those first few days, you start to notice tiny movements you used to overlook, like the soft curl of their tail tip, or the way their ears shift when they're deciding whether your presence feels inviting. These signals are their way of opening a small door, and when you wait for those invitations rather than assuming you're welcome, something in the space between you relaxes. Offering just a few seconds of gentle contact, then pulling your hand away, teaches your cat that you won't trap them in a moment they aren't ready for. And that freedom becomes a kind of safety all on its own. Touching the places where they naturally carry their scent, the sides of the face, the base of the ears, helps reinforce that shared identity they've been building. But only when they lean into it, rather than when you reach for them first. And once you feel how much trust grows from these small, respectful moments, you realize the bond isn't created by doing more. It's created by listening better. Chapter 10. Days 5 to 7. Creating a personalized bonding ritual. Most people assume the goal is to increase contact quickly. But the truth is that your cat decides the pace, not you. By the time you reach these days, you've learned enough of their subtle rhythms to notice when their body softens in your presence, and when it quietly asks for space. This makes it easier to build a small ritual that feels uniquely theirs. Maybe a few strokes along the cheek, a gentle pause, or simply sitting nearby while they choose how close to come. As you slowly extend each moment of positive contact, you'll notice how your cat reveals preferences you never realized they had, guiding you toward the kind of interaction that makes them feel known rather than managed. The key is watching for the earliest signs of overstimulation, a quick tail flick, a sudden stillness, and adjusting before their comfort tips into tension, because that's what strengthens their trust in you. And as this ritual begins to take shape, you can feel the shift inside yourself, too, realizing how much calmer and more connected everything becomes when you let their nature set the rhythm. Chapter 11. The critical mistake that breaks trust. The hardest truth to accept is that the moment you finally feel the bond growing is often the exact moment you're most likely to damage it. It's so human to want just a little more, to hold the contact a few seconds longer, to lean in when your cat leans out, to try to seal the moment instead of letting it breathe. But for a cat, that extra pressure feels like the ground shifting underneath them, and their body responds with the same quiet alarm they've carried across generations. You'll see it in the sharp blink, the twitch of a whisker, the tail stiffening in a way that tells you their trust is thinning faster than you realize. When you push past those early warnings, their stress rises, and the progress you've made doesn't disappear dramatically. It unravels softly, in the way they hesitate before approaching, or pause a little longer in the doorway. And the gentle thing is, if that happens, you can start again just by returning to observation, reminding them with your patience that their boundaries aren't obstacles. They're the place where real trust begins. There's something beautiful about seeing your cat's guardedness, not as a wall, but as a doorway they've been slowly opening in your direction. And the care you've shown, even when you didn't know the full story, is already part of why they trust you. The real shift comes when you understand that every boundary they set is another way of keeping your relationship honest and steady. Maybe you'll find yourself giving them just a little more room to choose you, knowing that this freedom is what makes them feel safe enough to come closer. And when you watch them settle beside you instead of on your lap, you might feel a new question forming. What are they telling you with that small bit of space they always seem to keep? If you've ever wondered about that gentle distance, the next video will help you see the meaning hidden inside it.